Hey, what's happening, everybody? Hope you guys are well. I want to say thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Focus For It podcast. I know it's been a while. In fact, it's almost been a year, but I promise you I'm going to do better at being consistent and making more content like this. Do me a huge favor, follow, like, subscribe to the channel. Let's get the word out. Focus Forward is back, and I'm hoping we can have some engaging conversation. This episode is going to be somewhat touching because it's personal to me. I want to talk about infertility, but I want to do it from the father's perspective. I know anytime we hear about infertility, most of us automatically think about the woman or the mother because the mother's who carries the child. And so we understand that. But I want to talk about this from a father's perspective. Now, those of you who know me personally will have likely heard my story. But for those of you who don't, we've never met, you've never seen me before, you never heard my testimony, my story. Here it is. So my wife and I were married back in October the 11th of 2003, been a long time. So it's been 21 years, be 22 years this October. So real quick, shout out to my wife, Sharella. Thank you, baby, for sticking it out with me all these years. I love you dearly and I appreciate you. But we were married October the 11th, 2003. And just like every other young couple, we really wanted to have children. So we began to try to have children and it never worked out. And for 3 years we tried and never were successful in getting pregnant. And so 2006 rolls around and thankfully, finally, we were able to get pregnant. And so my wife made it to about 20 weeks. And one morning she woke up and her water had burst. And we get her to the hospital and they admit her into the pregnancy area where they take the mothers. And she was already going into labor. And so at 22 and a half weeks, my first son was born. And he was less than a pound. And he didn't live very long. And we held him just for a few minutes and my son died. The significance about this is back in 95, 96, my parents got a divorce. I was 14 years old. And it was the first time that I'd heard the voice of God speak to me. My parents brought us in one day. My brothers and I were outside playing basketball. And my mother and father called us into the living room. And they told us, hey, we're getting a divorce. Things aren't working. And in that moment, I heard the Lord say, I'm going to give you a son. And it's the first time I ever heard the Lord speak to me like that. So I went back to doing my normal thing, being a kid. And so I always held on to that promise though. So when we got pregnant and my first son died, it threw me into somewhat of a conundrum. The natural side of this is I'm 26 years old, trying to figure out, or 25 years old, trying to figure out how to manage this. Now, if you know me personally, you know I'm not a terribly an emotional person. I don't really get emotional like that. I've always been the one to kind of process things quickly and just kind of get through it. And that's just kind of been my mode in life, is to accept things for what they are, especially things that I can't fix, and then just get through it and move on. And so my son dies. Of course, we are having a tough time dealing with it. And my wife is, of course, she's hysterical. She's having to deal with the fact that she has no proof of what she was carrying. And she's having to deal with the fact of having to go back to work, back into her normal life. And people have an expectation that you will bring home a baby after being pregnant. And so she's dealing with her own things and I am dealing with it, trying to hold everything together. So I remember my son dies and the doctors take him away, and I go to the top roof. I go to the top parking deck of the hospital we were in, and I walk and I have a talk with God. I said, listen, you got to get me through this. I don't know what I'm doing. And, I need to try to find a way to get through this. I got a wife down here that needs me. And I did my crying and I did my mourning in about that 30, 45 minute time frame that I was walking on that top level of that parking deck. And so I come back down and, my wife, she's still dealing with this. She's in and out because she's on some meds and everything. And over the next couple of days in the hospital, we start to have issues. And so my wife said, she lashed out at me. She said, listen, it's like you don't even care. And I said, well, I care, but I just process things quickly. I process things very quickly, again, because if I can't control it, then I try not to worry about it. In fact, most of the things that I've kept with me over the years that have really bothered me are things that I did or mistakes I've made that I had some control over in the beginning. So my wife's lashing out and she's like, you don't care, you can't care. And then she says, I haven't seen you cry. And when I heard her say that, what I realized in the moment then was that she was looking for a certain reaction. And more importantly, she was looking for a reaction that she was likely not going to get out of me, because that was not my way of showing emotions. Again, I'm just not an emotional guy like that. I've had to grow in my emotional intelligence. Even with my wife, I've had to learn to be emotionally available for her. And so she's lashing out and we're having this conversation. And again, looking back, I can see so many things that I did wrong in that moment. But in the moment, I was really frustrated because what my expectation was for her to be like me. Listen, this is what it is. We lost our child. We can have another one. But here in the moment, we don't have a child. We got to get back to living life. But again, I was trying to find some space to deal with that on my own and also leave space to kind of be there for her. And I did a horrible job at it. Let me be real. I did not succeed in doing that very well. And so we get home, and over the course of the next few days and weeks and months, you hear the saying that says time heals all. Well, sometimes it takes a lot of time. And I'm not so sure that time heals all. Time can get you away from the trauma, but if you don't process it right, I think what happens is time just allows you to not think about it as much. But I think when you'll find that when things happen, a certain smell or a certain sound or something that happens that triggers the memory of that trauma, it's like the feelings come back automatically. And so my wife started to deal with that. And she started to deal with, it was a very hard time for her. And I made the mistake of trying to push her too fast. And I made the mistake of trying to help her in my own way, very unsuccessfully, right? And to help her get through it, to help her get over it. And that was my thing, get over it. And I don't think I did a very good job at that. But what I also think is that may have been a way of me trying to hide my own feelings and hide my own process from her so that she wouldn't see me as being weak. And I think this is a challenge for fathers, is that, or just men in general, is that we get so caught up in trying to be there for the woman, for our wives, or for the mother of our children, that we don't really take time to process things correctly ourselves, so that we have time for us and we are available for our wives or the mother of our children. And I think that processing or that lack of availability to them is what kind of breaches this contention between the mother and the father. I think sometimes we can be, I think men in general are just, we lack emotional intelligence or emotional expression or controlled emotional expression. I think most men will deal with things in an angry way. It's just typical that's typically our emotion of choice, so to say. But as we grow older, we know better and we do better. But having to deal with that over the years has been somewhat challenging for me, because I've had to watch my wife deal with this and grow from it. It didn't happen overnight. It did not happen over a month or a year. In fact, even now, and we are almost 19, 20 years away from that moment, if she thinks about it too bad now, or it really weighs on her, she has her moments even now. And what I've learned to do is I've learned to just give her that space. Now I am much better. I have not really mourned that because of just the way I'm wired to process things quickly. But I think one of the things that I could have done better in the moment, this is where I want to encourage fathers, And I want to encourage everybody who knows anybody who's dealing with infertility or even losing a child preterm. The child is born at term, or if the child dies young. Encourage communication. I want all of the fathers to know, number one, you're not alone. I understand what you've having to do, what you're having to deal with. I understand what you've gone through. I understand what you are going through now. I've been there. My advice to all fathers and mothers and those around them is to encourage communication in time. Now, here's the fact of the matter. Most men are not good communicators. We don't like to talk because we don't like to voice our challenges or our thoughts, because it's seen as being weak. It's seen as being someone insufficient as a man. But encourage conversation, encourage communication, because it lets the other party know where you are, especially for those who are in a relationship or you're married. It's paramount that you guys have those conversations. And again, I did not do a very good job at it because I did not know how to communicate what I was feeling in the moment. And I don't think that I necessarily healed wrong from that. I think I processed it the way I knew how to. And I haven't had any bad feelings or anything like that, or even trouble over the years in dealing with it. But I think my mode of communication was terribly misplaced. And again, because I was emotionally unavailable for my wife. And so while trying to process things on the inside of me, I didn't know how to do that and handle her. Because what I did not want to do was make her feel like I couldn't handle it. Because in the moment we're dealing with things, we're having to sign papers and, all of this stuff. And what was going on in my head in the moment was, one of us has got to be level-headed enough to have a conversation with the doctor. And that was my train of thought, right? It was trying to, okay, let's do this, take care of business. But by that time, and I know it was just a couple of days later, by that time I had processed it. Now, some will say that that's, not healthy, or some will say I may be a little bit crazy. And my wife will tell you that too, but that was just my way of getting through it. I try not to let things linger, and I try to handle things as they come. And so allowing this to fester, allow this to take residence in my heart, in my mind, and my spirit was not what I was willing to do, because I had to be there for my wife. I didn't know what the days were going to bring. I didn't know how to be there for her. But thank God he got us through it. But again, I want all the fathers to know you're not alone. You're not by yourself. If you know anybody who's dealing with infertility, if you know anybody who is dealing with, who've recently lost a child and they don't know what to do, encourage them to talk, and to encourage the parents to talk. Because as men, we're charged with covering our wives and our homes and those who we love and those who we lead. And part of that covering sometimes is being vulnerable. And I know we as men do a horrible job at that because we don't like the feelings that it gives us, right? And we don't want to feel vulnerable, because at that point, it's almost like you're showing your nakedness, your naked heart to a person, and you are at your most vulnerable state when you communicate your feelings. Well, the truth of the matter is, any issue with infertility is damaging. It can be damaging. It can be stressful. It can be discouraging, having to face disappointment after disappointment. I'll tell you that looking back, we lost way more children than we knew in the moment, because we attributed my wife's extreme bleeding to heavy cycles. Again, hindsight is 2020. And so as we're processing all of this, again, we've lost a baby. We're trying to get through our own, emotions and communicating and everything. And I'm trying to do what I can do. Then we have to go to the doctor and discuss to try to figure out why we lost the baby. And they just called it incompetent cervix. And that pretty much means that her cervix just couldn't hold the baby. There's no other explanation for why we lost our son. And then the doctor says to my wife, you may have to get used to the fact that some women just can't have children. Now, in the moment, my wife was crushed. And if I can be honest with you, I wanted to hit that doctor in the mouth. That's what I wanted to do. Because I think that doctor lacked bedside manners. I don't think he had very much compassion. And I don't think he was trying to relate or trying to encourage a young couple. I think there's even a way that you can deliver bad news that shows compassion. And so he said that, and so we move on, and we end up going to a different doctor, and we tried to have children after that. It didn't work. We had a couple of miscarriages after that, and we just kept trying. We did all we could. And then in 2007, we got pregnant with Trey. And so we went through the whole 9 yards of, my wife had a cerclage installed, and by that time she was considered high risk because we had lost a baby. And all of these things are going on, and as a man, I'm having to fight through the difficulty of hoping for a future while trying to forget the past. And I think sometimes, just in general, men, we don't take into consideration the amount of damage that past has done to us. I think we live life and we gain these experiences, or we have these experiences, and if we don't process them, then they start to layer. And that makes it hard to have hope. It makes it hard to look forward to a future that you want for yourself. And this is just with anything. It makes it difficult. And so I'm in this moment trying to hope for a future, trying to find a way to hope for a future while remembering the past. And also, because of the issues we've dealt with before, trying to leave room for the possibility we may lose our son again. And this was during a moment in my life where my faith was being challenged in a way that I had no idea it could be challenged on. I think anytime God makes you a promise, there's always a process. And God doesn't always tell you the process. He guarantees you the promise, but he doesn't always tell you how you'll get the promise. And sometimes that's where our challenge is trying to walk out the process until a promise comes to fruition. And so as a father, as a husband, I'm trying to get my wife through, trying to be supportive. And by this time, I've learned to communicate a little bit. And so she's pregnant, and she's dealing with her own fear. And I'm watching her deal with her own fear because, again, this is a few months after we lost our first son. So, again, we lost our first son November the 20th, 2006. And then in 2007, we get pregnant. Our son Trey was born on March 26, 2008. So we get pregnant the very next year. And she was able to carry him full term. We went in, did the cerclage and everything. But having to watch her deal with that fear and trying to find the fortitude to support her in a way that she felt supported, a way that was authentic. But again, also leaving room for me to try to find my way through my own feelings, find my way through my own emotions, because what I did not want to do is I did not want to weigh her down. And I think this is the challenge for fathers in those moments, even when you're in the moment and you get another pregnancy, or you're pregnant again and you're hoping for a healthy child, right? You're having to try to find a way to get through that, because again, you're trying to be there for your wife or your baby's mother. And also you're trying to just leave room for yourself. And that, I think that's the gray area nobody talks about. That's the gray area for a man that most times we don't hear about. And that's because a lot of us don't tell our stories. And so my hope with this is that, number one, men figure out that you're not alone. My hope is that men find support systems. Is that I hope that those who are surrounding these families will help and support and pray for the man in the scenario, and not just the mother, but pray for the father. Be there for the father. Check on the father. Because believe it or not, most times men will carry things, and sometimes our wives and our women will never know. It's just the nature of being a man. It's the nature of who we are. Wrong at times. I don't think it's healthy, but it's just who we are as men. And I think sometimes we have to, as men, find those places where you can be vulnerable, especially dealing with major issues like this, where you've taken a hit, a significant hit, and you are trying to find a way to have hope. And so again, we had Trey in 2008, and then again we had more miscarriages. We tried to have children, it never happened. And then as God's sense of humor goes, we get pregnant with Taylor in 2019. So yeah, there's that. So in August, we'll have a senior in high school and a kindergartner. So y'all say a prayer for me and my patience. So, cause I'm old now, right? So I'm 44, so not exactly a spring chicken. But I want you fathers to know, man, you're not alone. You're not alone. It's okay to feel, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to not have all the answers. And I think that may be one of the challenges also, in that we have been challenged with having all of the answers, when in fact we really don't. We don't have answers for ourselves, so we sure can't have answers for nobody else. And so that is a great area that we have to live through. And I've learned in life that sometimes, a lot of times, life is lived in the gray area where you can't really find the rules. No one can tell you how to do it. No one can tell you how to get through it. It's one of those things that you have to kind of live through. But it helps to have support. It does help to have those who have walked that walk, who've had to go through what you are going through, and to lean on them as a support system. And so I want to encourage all of you fathers who are dealing with this now, who have dealt with this. Again, I'll keep saying it, man, you are not alone. I know it feels like sometimes the walls are closing in on you and you may be frustrated, especially if you were like me, this was a repetitive issue. I even went through the whole thing of getting my sperm count checked, right? And we were trying to get pregnant and all this stuff, and it wasn't working. So I went through the whole 9 yards. We thought about adoption, we thought about all that stuff, but I chalk it up to being it just wasn't God's will at the time. And that's where I find my peace. That's where I find my solitude. That's where I find rest for my mind. Is that God knows more than I do. He knows better than I know. And ultimately, God is sovereign. I have not questioned that since then. I trust that God knows more than I will ever know. And because of that, I'll let him deal with that. And so I choose to be grateful. I choose to let God be God. I choose to let God be sovereign. I choose to keep my faith. I choose to keep hope. I choose to keep pushing. So fathers, again, man, you are not alone. You're not alone. I want to encourage you to find somebody to talk to. If it's a counselor, a friend who can relate, because sometimes you need somebody who has walked that walk before. Find your support system. It is unhealthy for you to keep all of those emotions bottled up with something as serious and significant as losing a child. Again, nobody talks about the father's pain, and most people won't hear the father's cry because the focus is on the mother. And I get it, man. Mothers, again, they have to carry the child, and they are attached to that child in a way that we will never understand as fathers. Their bodies have to go through certain things. My wife still had to go through a whole delivery process even after we lost the baby. So it was a very challenging moment, but I'm thankful. It was a growing moment. As I look back, I'm able to see things that I did not do right. And thankfully, God saw fit to bless me with 2 wonderful children. And I'm grateful. So fathers, I'm praying for you. I want you to know that it's not your fault, whatever you're feeling. I want you to get rid of the guilt. Ask God to help you with your frustrating moments. Pray for yourself, pray for your wife, and pray together. I promise you, it'll get you through. Well, again, man, thank y'all for joining in. I do appreciate it. I know it was a bit of a heavy topic, but it was something that's been on my heart for a while to do, and actually I've been putting it off just because it was personal to me. And again, I know what it's like to be in those moments dealing with this specific topic. But again, guys, you're not alone, man. You're not alone. You are not alone. And I keep saying that because sometimes when we're going through things in life, one of the biggest things we think is that nobody feels what we feel. Well, you're not alone. I felt it. I know what it's like. And I'm not the only one. There are going to be some other guys who watch this who will say, yeah, I know what that feels like too. But then they'll also be able to tell you that they made it through and they persevered. Well, listen, guys, thank y'all so very much for hanging out with me and sticking around and listening to me. I hope that my story was encouraging to some man, to some father, to help you keep going, to help you keep pushing. So you can follow us on all social media at The Focus Forward Podcast 24, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. As always, y'all keep pushing. Focus forward.